Irreducible complexity. Could you explain to our listeners and viewers what irreducible complexity is and why it's being brought into the discussion?
One way to think of irreducible complexity is whatever it is that Michael Behe cannot understand, he cannot explain. He thinks it's irreducibly complex, but in fact he does give a definition of it. He thinks that there are certain structures, certain biological structures, and I'll give you a couple of examples in a minute, that are so complex that they could not possibly, in principle, have come about by natural processes. And therefore, they're outside of science, and hence he concludes that there must have been an intelligent design.
Like the mousetrap argument.
That's right. So the mousetrap argument is this. Behe sort of presented this metaphor of the mousetrap. He said, look, if you look at a mousetrap, it is clearly a artificial, intelligently designed object. There is no way that a natural process could ever put together a mousetrap for the simple reason that if you take any part or any of the working parts of a mousetrap away, it stops working. It just doesn't work anymore. The functionality is completely lost. If that is the case, then it's impossible for Behe to imagine how a natural process would put together a mousetrap little by little, step by step, because all of the intermediate steps will have to be functional. But Behe's position is that can't be done with mousetrap, which is why a mousetrap is an intelligently designed object. Now, first of all, it's obvious that mousetraps are in fact intelligently designed. We all know where they come from. We in fact even know who the intelligent designer is in that case. It also turns out that he picked the wrong example because there's a wonderful website that actually shows how you can in fact build a mousetrap bit by bit, starting with only one piece. And it does work. Even a mousetrap that is made only of one piece, it actually works. It just doesn't work as well as a completely formed mousetrap. So Behe ended up picking the wrong example. But the idea is clear, what he means. Now the question is, are these irreducibly complex structures actually found in nature? Is there anything in biological structures that really corresponds to the equivalent of a mousetrap? Now Behe suggests that there are, and that they're found mostly at the molecular level. These examples are the bacterial flagellum, which is a sort of a whip-like organ that some bacteria use to swim, and which is made of several dozen different proteins that have to work together in a particular way in order for the flagellum to work. Another example would be the blood clotting cascade, biochemical cascade, the biochemical events that need to happen in order for blood clotting to happen, and so for animals not to lead to death because of an injury, and so on. It has several of these examples. Now, the problem is that it just so happens that biologists have thought about these sort of examples and have studied the evolution of these sort of structures. And it was pointed out repeatedly to Michael Behe over the last several years that actually we do know of intermediate structures in the evolution of the bacterial flagellum. We do know of animals that have simpler blood clotting cascades compared to the ones that, for example, human beings have, which all shows that there are, in fact, simplified ways of making those things work.
And so I think sometimes genes have more than one function anyway, so the gene that would produce a certain characteristic might be there anyway to begin with.
That's right. Back in, this is not a new idea in evolutionary biology. Back in 1964, a Nobel Prize-winning biologist, Francois Jacob, who actually studied, in fact, proteins in bacteria, the evolution of proteins in bacteria, came up with this nice analogy. He said that evolution works like a bricoleur. A bricoleur is a French word for the sort of a do-it-yourself kind of person. Now, what does that mean? It means that evolution really takes the bits and pieces that are already available in an organism and changes them around a little bit and accommodates them a little bit. It's like you go into your garage, you have a lot of junk around, and you want to make a new thing, like a new piece of furniture. You don't build it from scratch. What you do is, well, I got a piece of wood over here, I get a nail over there, I put them together, and all of a sudden I got a stool, or something like that. That's the way evolution works. It works by recycling a lot of parts that have been present originally, which gets around, it solves the problem of apparently irreducible complexity. Behe's mistake is that he doesn't seem to understand that the process doesn't work in reverse. Once if you build your furniture, okay, even out of pieces that you found here and there over a period of time in your garage, if you take a piece out, the furniture is in fact not going to work.
Right.
But that's because you're taking a piece out of the final product. You're not looking at the evolution, at the putting together of that product.
One thing that he said, I think, in the preface of his book, Darwin's Black Box, was that, maybe I'm remembering this wrong, but he said something to the effect that no one is exploring evolution, no one is pursuing evolution from a molecular standpoint.
Which is stunning.
I mean, that's not even the... I was sitting, I said, well, what is DNA about?
Right.
Yeah.
It is stunning because the field of molecular evolutionary biology has been thriving for several decades now. But, you know, the thing about Michael Behe is that, I met the guy several times. And the last time was a few months ago at NYU, New York University. And we were having a sort of a discussion going on how the media should be covering controversies such as intelligent design and evolution and things of that sort. And, you know, it was a pleasant conversation until the point in which I reminded Michael Behe of something that he said during his testimony at the Dover trial in Pennsylvania a couple of years ago.
Which he'd like to forget.
He would like to forget it, but in that trial, which was about the teaching of intelligent design in public schools, the judge presiding, who was a conservative judge and particularly, certainly not one of these
And
activist
appointed
liberal,
by Bush?
Appointed by Bush, certainly not one of these activist liberal judges, wherever they are.
Well, he is now, apparently.
He is now, apparently, right.
Yeah.
But the judge pointed out asked a straightforward question to Behe. He said, you know, Professor Behe, if what you're saying, if what I am understanding you're saying about intelligent design is correct, then shouldn't it follow also that things like astrology should be taught in public schools? And to the stunned surprise of everybody, Michael Behe admitted that, yes, indeed, intelligent design is in fact like astrology. Well, case closed, it seems to me. Yeah. But apparently not.
Dr. Pigliucci has debated creationists many times. Dwayne Gish, he's with the Institute for Creation Research,
Correct.
California. You debated him 5 times.
Yes, or something like that. I'm trying to forget it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that they have this statement at that institute for people who work there that if
they have to subscribe to a biblical view of science, otherwise they're not accepted in their faculty, which is a very interesting statement. I mean, I don't know of any university in the country, any serious university in the country, I should say, that requires any statement of belief from their faculty or their students. It's just out of the question. I mean, that's what academia is about. You don't have to have subscribe to a particular set of beliefs. You know, let me tell you my favorite story about Dwayne Gish, because I think it illustrates some of the troubling modus operandi of these people. So at one point, during one of our debates, I think it was one of the first ones, Gish pulled out a slide on the screen which had a quotation from by Stephen Jay Gould, who was a very prominent evolutionary biologist who died a few years ago. And if you read that quotation, it looked like Stephen Gould didn't believe in evolution, which would have been surprising considering he was one of the most famous evolutionary biologists. And I looked at the quotation. I didn't know where it was coming from. So when it was time for my rebuttal, I just simply ignored it. You know, these debates, the dynamics of these debates are such that the other side throws at you hundreds of points, and you can only pick and choose a few to actually address. So I let that slide because I had no idea where he got it from. But I wrote down the quotation. And, you know, miracles of the Internet, I went home and I did a little bit of search and asked a few friends around, and I found the quotation. It turns out that, yes, there was such a phrase in one of Gould's books, but it ended with a comma, not a period. And after the comma, Gould said something along the lines of, but of course nobody believes this sort of nonsense. Oh. So I wrote that down, I made a note of it. Months later, I debated Gish again. And of course, he forgot all about that particular incident. He presented exactly the same slide. And I thought, you know, God just delivered us.